My name is Elena, and I'm one of the co-founders of our project Gastroband and WineOnline. And today I'm in charge of making sure everything goes smoothly during this event. I'm delighted to introduce to you guys my very close colleague. Hey, Mila. Hello.
So very happy to see everyone again and welcome to our wonderful evening.
Yeah, I continue our introduction for Mila. Yeah, Mila is our incredible sommelier. And last but not least, we have a speaker, Zara, the owner of the company Ginvina, and the person who is in charge of delivering the best Georgian and best Armenian wine to your doorstep.
Hi, everyone. So nice to have you all around today. Some familiar faces, some new faces. Great. I'm Armenian by descent. And the way it all started for me with Armenian wine was during my business trip to Düsseldorf when I was meeting my Argentinian winemakers and I was challenged by my father to go and try Armenian wines. And I actually questioned it. Said, really, Armenian wine, are you sure? He said, what do you mean, am I sure? This is not even, I'm not even discussing it. You're going. And I knew I have to go. But anyway, so the first day and then afterwards, every single day after I was done with my meetings, I would go to the pavilion where Armenian wine stand was and would try Armenian wines. And I was literally astonished with the quality. This was a region. When you look at Armenia and Georgia, millennials ago, there were no countries. There were people who lived there. And that's why, I do not want to say it's Armenia or Georgia first. Some people have found traces of 6,000 years. Some have found 8,000 years. But the interesting thing is that the distance between these two archaeological excavations in both of the countries is so minimal. Like you can literally reach there in less than 2 hours between the two spots. And both of the countries actually use this beautiful amphora, which each call slightly differently. Armenians call it Garagist, Georgians call it cradle. They actually chose this specific spot to show it to you because this one is actually 280 years old amphora that has been shipped from a mountainous village for us to show here in UK.
Give a little historical background to everyone before we actually start discussing this wine, because you mentioned a few things, and I think it makes sense to maybe explain to people because not everyone may know about Caucasus and why it is considered the birthplace of winemaking and all that stuff. But basically, you guys probably know that this tasting is called Wines from Where It All Started. And in fact, we had two tastes. So this is our second tasting under this umbrella name. So the first one was about Georgian wines, and this one is about Armenian wines. And the reason we chose this name was actually because, well, both of these countries, they do have the right to be called the birthplace, the cradle of the world's winemaking. And both of these countries, yes, they do argue for this right, of course. But yeah, as Zara mentioned, clearly, winemaking dates back to thousands and thousands years BC. So clearly, at those times, there were no Georgia or Armenia as such. Those were just lands with different ethnicities populating those territories, and all of them did make wine. We know that for sure. And the thing is that in Georgia, they discovered the oldest clay jar, like a big amphora with traces of grape seeds in it. And it dates back to like 6,000 BC, if I'm not mistaken. So that's like the oldest historically known clay jar, like a wine vessel, a vessel used for wine production. It was discovered in Georgia. But then in Armenia, in return, they've discovered the world's oldest winery in the south of the country. Yeah, it's big. Zara is making signs. I'm going to show pictures in just a second. So in the south of the country, in a village called Areni, am I pronouncing it correctly, Zara? Areni, yeah, Areni. So they found a cave with multiple wine vessels with multiple clay jars and even an ancient wine press as well. So that's considered the world's oldest winery, and that dates back to 4100 BC. Yeah, I got my dates right. So it's slightly younger than the clay jar that they discovered in Georgia, but obviously we understand that, you know, those two countries are very close by, they're close neighbors, and obviously, you know, winemaking started there, and yeah, you know, doesn't really matter which specific village it was. But yeah, it's quite fascinating because there is even a theory that you know, these seafaring civilizations like Phoenicians and Greeks, they basically took the vines from Armenia and Georgia, from those territories, and they brought them into Europe, into what today we know as the old world of wine. And those vines, the vines from Caucasus, they basically they mutated in the new terroirs, in the new lands, in the new conditions, and they gave birth to what we know today as all the modern so-called noble grape varieties, you know, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, and everything that we know and everything that we drink today. That's just a theory, but it's quite fascinating that, you know, that's where it all came from. And Armenia still remains like a big land of those really ancient indigenous grape varieties, which date back to thousands and thousands years, and we can still taste them today. So this is just, I mean, for me as a wine geek, as a wine lover, this is just very exciting, and this thought just really inspires me. You know, I'm drinking something that has been grown, and a wine that has been made for centuries, and this grape variety is just like, it has such a long history behind it.
I visited the cave in 2018, I think, or 17. And my guide was one of the archaeologists that was part of the group that were excavating the cave. And what he said, by the way, if you Google the first human shoe was found in that cave, in that winery. So what they said is that they actually, like, you see in the mountains, there is this sort of cave sort of cracks. It's like huge mountains there, like literally, if you look at the people descending from the stairs, you can see how big the entrance is. And then as you walk in, you see a huge complex of winery. And what they told us is that they have really excavated to a certain level, and they think, they're actually certain of it, is that it's only that the humanity does not possess the technology yet to go further down, because they think there are further artifacts that can be found. And what they said, that they left it for the future generations to dig further down. So I hope, you know, that's something that I'll see in my life. But yes, that's the winery. That's where they found the first human shoe. That's where they found actually people buried there. And one story that I was told, which I just remembered, what Boris told me, he was the guide. He said, and the archaeologist, he said apparently in the old times, after the wines were stored, you know, they would shoot a bow into the winemaker, and he would drop into the jar or aras, and they would bury him for the luck, or for him not to repeat that great vintage again. Now, it's a bit cruel, I know, because that way you would be basically running out of winemakers in the region. But that's one of the legends.
In Armenia, never. It could never happen there.
No, if every year you should have winemaker, you have to be producing that many winemakers every year, you know, to take the place. By the way, that was something that I was told, and it was very funny. But if you guys happen to go to Armenia, and they say they open and close the cave to the public, but if you arrange it up front, they will take you there, and it's an experience not to be missed, for sure.
It's very dry, I'll say that. It's drier than I was expecting. It's so, you know, usually when you have whites, you expect some sort of bouquet or floralness, but this has really got a very strong Sauvignon Blanc, like, dry to it, which I wasn't expecting because I didn't look at the tasting notes before I ordered it.
But that's great though, because
I
it's all new
good.
and fresh.
Yeah.
If you don't look at before. But yeah, I think the acidity is great. And the aroma is very kind of ripe and lush, and that's why you kind of expect that the wine will be more ripe and lush in your mouth, but it's actually quite lean on your palate.
The first time I tasted Kangun properly was 2015. And I had exactly the same view as you, as I had no idea how it will age. Will it become more complex? Does it really need to have, oak? Does it need to have winemaker to do more work with it to make it age better? And what I have realized throughout the years, that depending on how different winemakers make the wine, and I like this one particularly because it comes from a specific plot near Sasunik village near Ashtarak, which is it's not when you look into Armenia, you're looking into highlands where Biozor is, and then that's where our reds are when we taste them. And this one comes from slightly lower altitude. And when I say lower, I mean 1,100, between 900 and 1,100. So it's really high altitude in general. Like in Georgia, the highest is that much. In Armenia, the lowest is that much. But when it comes to this grape variety, I personally selected this winery because they have left the skins slightly longer than the other wineries that I have tried, and that's why you see a really nice sort of color. And I still have 3 cases of 2015 vintage. I was thinking, I need to sell them quickly and move to the next vintage so that, public perceives, the younger vintages for white is what the people want. But this grape variety, Kangun, which means standing strong, I think you mentioned that you think it's like a very strong sort of, body wine. It changes quite interestingly. In a way, it seems like it's not Riesling. It doesn't have a flavor profile of Riesling, but it does not. It can age like a Riesling that hasn't seen an oak, and improve. So I think it's a variety, and because this is something that we will see year on year. I'm now shipping 2019. And I'm going to keep definitely some cases of 18 to sell later on because they are improving. But there's no oak here, by the way.
For a white wine, it's got quite a high alcohol level. So it's 14% alcohol, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct? Is that 14%?
It is 14%.
Yeah, so
you never feel it. You don't feel
exactly.
it. And that's where the quality of the wine comes into play. It's so well balanced.
It's very well balanced indeed, but 14% for white wine is a lot, but it is one of the factors which allows it to age well and to be well preserved for a while, because alcohol does work as antioxidant in wine, and it does work to preserve it basically. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, some of you may feel that kind of sweetness on the palate as well, because certain types of alcohols do feel a little bit sweet on the palate. And also, it does have good acidity, and it does have quite a lot to it. The flavor is quite rich. So, I mean, you would definitely expect it to age well and to sort of develop and not to lose its flavor as well. And I mean, for me, it's quite a rich wine for a white as well. And you can feel a lot there. And I'm getting a lot of quince. Am I pronouncing this fruit name correctly? Always struggling to like quince, quince, Aiva, quince. So actually, like I think in Armenia, Georgia probably as well, they do make like a jam out of quince, right? And to me, this wine kind of tastes a little bit like that quince jam, which is really popular in Armenia, or smells a little bit like it. And then there is a lot of nice sweet fruit and some citrusy and maybe lemony notes to it as well. So it's quite rich. So I mean, you would definitely expect it to age well. And also, I think, am I right that this variety was and still is widely used for Armenian cognac production, Armenian brandy production?
It is.
Kangun.
Yes. They do use because of its sort of muscle, you know, it's a bit of a muscle sort of grape variety. And because I think voskehat is getting more and more sort of spotlight. Nowadays, Kangon goes a lot into sort of distilling and then going into the brandy. By the way, you know, since we talked about brandy, and when Lena was saying this, I'm going to quickly say this something that I was told literally 2 days ago. Apparently, when Winston Churchill was shipped his, he, Stalin would ship him cases of brandy all the time. And one day he receives a case, he opens it, he tries, it's like, something is wrong with brandy. What's going on? So Stalin picks up the phone and calls Armenia, says, "What's wrong with the brandy?" And they say, "Well, actually, you have jailed the chief. I don't know. Do they call them brandy makers? I don't know.
Matter the Shah or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. You have jailed him." He said, "This a very exact moment. Get him back into the brandy factory, to the cognac, factory straight away." So they released the guy, he came back, and he's one of sort of legends of the Armenian brandy making. But that was something that I was told like 3 days ago. Like, really, I had no idea.
Amazing. That's how good Armenian brandy is.
It can save you a life.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good slogan. As good as it, good enough to save your life.
Yes.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, Zara, I was gonna ask you to actually tell us a little bit about this winemaker as well, because it's quite a fascinating guy, is it not? And yeah, it'd be good to hear his story. Van Ardi one.
Van Ardi actually means son of Van. Ardi in Old Armenian means son. And if you guys have the bottle with you, their logo actually shows the pagan god of sun, and that, like, the guy that is sitting sort of, and even when you look at the top, in a way resembles Egyptian god of Ra, of the sun again. So Van Ardi, he called it Van Ardi because his roots come from eastern part of Turkey, where Van is, and the Lake Van, and Van, it's quite. I mean, I don't want to go into history a lot, but most of you probably know 9/10 of the lands are now, which were once Armenian, are no longer Armenian, and that part of the world was Armenian once, and he took that name because that's where his great grandparents came from. He's actually born in Armenia, Varujan, who then, after Soviet Union collapsed, he went to study in US, and he had a big sort of accounting practice in LA. And at some point, he thought that he wants to buy vineyards in Napa Valley and start a winery there. And then I think, like me, I went first to Argentina, and I started with Argentinian wines, and then I moved to Armenia, to Armenian winemaking. He did the same. He went back to Armenia. He bought land in Ararat Valley, and he planted vineyards. And he's a very interesting guy. He's also the winemaker. He does it all by himself. He does not employ another winemaker. So this is not one of your nouveau riche people who go buy a winery and decide that they want to own a winery, and they say, okay, this is my winery. He studied himself. He's sort of self-educated winemaker who is reading a lot, who is experimenting a lot. And when I started with this winery, I asked him, so what's going to happen within the next few vintages? Because obviously when I bring a wine into UK, I want to make sure that I have, the next vintages lined up. And he said, well, yes, but I'm also experimenting. So every year I get something new, which is very interesting. So yes, Varujan is quite an interesting, peculiar character, and his wines are so as well. That's a bit about him.
So Armenian wines, they're usually really rich and really kind of medium to full-bodied, and they do open up really nicely as they kind of warm up a little bit. So yeah, do just keep an eye on it and see how it goes, and let us know maybe as well. But yeah, let's pour ourselves some rosé, whoever is doing it. But yeah, our rosé is quite quite an interesting wine as well, and it's made out of the Armenian legend, I could say, the most famous grape variety of Armenia, Areni or Areni Noir. You probably, well, I'm hoping that you remember this name because I've already mentioned it today. So that's basically the name of the village and the cave and the most ancient winery which was discovered in Armenia. So the grape variety Areni, it comes from the same area, and it is grown around the same village, and supposedly maybe those first wines, those world's first wines, were made out of this variety as well. Well, we don't know, but maybe it's really ancient. It does have several thousands of years of history behind it. So yeah, and it's a red variety. We will taste a red wine made of it as well. But yeah, now it's rosé, and it's quite an intense rosé as well. Quite a powerful one, isn't it, Zara?
You know, Armenian Noir is a very noble grape, and to put it into rosé means that you're going to forego a more expensive red wine that you can sell. So from a business perspective, you know, you will make a rosé from Areni and make it this good only if you feel passionate about producing a wine like this. Otherwise, from a business perspective, you better sell a red wine of it. This is a wine that has been very popular with French people here in UK, and we have a French sommelier who is heading the team in Yorkshire. There's a Michelin star restaurant, Box Tree, where actually Charles Aznavour once has been. And he liked this wine so much that it has been on his gourmet menu for 3 months. So it would have been his rosé by the glass. And what he said is that probably it's one of the best rosés he has tried, and in his life. And he's told me Provence rosés are overrated, Zara. They really are. And when it comes to rosé, what I like about this one, because when you try different Armenian rosés, they're either darker in color because they want to have more flavor profiles. This one is really your right sort of salmon color, not too dark, not too light, but has a lot going on about it on the nose, but and on the palate. It's a rosé that you can equally say you can drink it with food, without food. It's going to really I don't know. I really love it. And year on year, I always ask people to achieve the same color.
To be honest, for me, I'm not really a rosé drinker. So, and I've only had one other rosé from Armenia, which I think was the brand Armenia. That was a gift. But it's actually very smooth, and I sometimes find that, and I don't know if it's other rosés generally tend to be slightly still quite harsh, but this one's very smooth. It's very, I don't know, for me, it's quite florally. But it's a very, yeah, I mean, I'm quite surprised by the taste of it, but it's really nice.
Thank you.
Great
to have
hear.
a good opinion from a non-rosé person is always a good thing.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Maybe we will turn you this evening.
Well, if I get more of this, then yes, I might be very convinced.
Yeah.
Again, this is interesting. I never prepare for Zoom virtual tastings, to be honest with you. It all comes like whatever, I feel like sharing. We did participate in a rosé festival here in UK. It happened only once, which is a shame because it was a great one. And you could only drink rosé there, just rosé. So we had the stand and we had 2 rosés, and we thought, okay, let's show pomegranate wine as well. And we had Whispering Angel stand next to us. And I think you guys know, like, Whispering Angel is one of the sort of rosé brands here in UK, and it's, relatively expensive, etc. And you would have a very sexy guy and a sexy girl, selling the wine. And then I was told the secret about selling lots of wine during these festivals is to have a very sexy stuff at the stand. It's like, okay, fine. I had no idea. Anyway, we've had lots of people who would come, taste our rosé, and would never leave the stand. It was literally like breaking that perception that, okay, it's not just Whispering Angel. There are other unusual rosés. Let's go and try it. So it was a really nice one. Shame, I mean, maybe with COVID gone, it will resume. But rosé festival is really interesting. it's not, but this is the thing, you see, the rosés that you will buy in the supermarket, in the wine shops, they are made specifically to be sold that year. This is the thing, they prepare that wine to be sold for that price during that period of time. It's all sort of commercially set up. When it comes to these wines and this country, they produce only, Armenia produce only like 3, 4, they say now 5, 6 million bottles. It's nothing. One of my Georgian produces only 4 million on its own. So when you think about it, people focus on quality. So no one is going to be producing an okayish rosé, I hope. So when it comes to producing the rosé, they take it as seriously as a red, and they do not treat it as a sort of commodity. That's why the quality comes out. That's why I say, sometimes you sell, you use that same grape to go into a red and sell much more. But I think that's where we're lucky that Voskevaz, this is the winery that we are drinking the rosé from, has put, some really nice grapes into producing this rosé. So we have 2 reds today to try. One is Nuraz from the same winery, Voskevaz. The other one is Old Bridge from a different winery. So most of you will have Nuraz as well. And Voskevaz, in Armenian, Voski means gold, Vaz means bunch. Voskevaz means golden bunch. And it's also the name of the village, the winery. And interestingly, this winery is actually it's the oldest surviving one, operating one, since 1932. So literally, like in 11 years, it will turn 100 years old. And during Soviet time, it would have been producing very interesting fortified wines and even cradles. It's a very interesting winery. It has these very old, cellars. If you happen to go to Armenia, I encourage you to go and see that winery. They are now reconstructing it after the Soviet Union collapsed. A lot of sort of enterprises have been privatized, and 4 brothers, Hovhannisyan brothers, they bought this winery, and they have been running it now for 30 years. So what I wanted to show, the reason I think it's good to look at the label of this wine, and they have in their range, they have 4 wines which have this like similar label. We mentioned Van Ardi and Van, the Lake Van, and there's an island, and on that island there is a church which is over 1,000 years old. It's a church called Saint Cross, translated, and on that church you have bar engravings from Armenian stone tooth, where it shows the connection of Armenians to the winemaking. And on these labels, they have literally taken the engraving from that church and put the different elements on those wines. So here you can see the man and the grapes and someone, I think it's a donkey helping go through the vineyard and harvest the grapes. So Voskevaz is one of, I personally love the whole team and the winery and everything behind this winery is beautiful. So this is actually the winery that has the Garasi collection, the wine that they have fermented in Garas, and it's sort of, if I start talking about this winery, we will go for hours, but it's one of the this is one of the champions making fermenting old wines in Garas, like this little one. They have huge ones, and then putting them in amphoras, and they take trophies like Best of Armenia. For their reds, for their whites, so they're very much award-winning winery.
So it's a blend. It's a blend of 2 varieties, which is Ahtanak and Kahet. So we are talking about other 2 indigenous Armenian varieties. You guys are going to become experts in them by the end of this tasting, hopefully. Really interesting ones as well. And Ahtanak is more kind of fuller bodied and maybe more powerful and more intense, and kahet is more about fruitiness and more about lushness and juiciness in the wine. So they kind of work really well together. If of you may have heard of phylloxera, which is a really dangerous grape disease, which basically just destroyed the vineyards all over Europe in the 19th century. It's like a little tiny insect which eats the roots of the grape, and like the biggest part of the European vineyards died because of this disease in the 19th century. And Armenia never really knew phylloxera until recent times, when one of the producers started bringing international grape varieties into Armenia, trying to plant them there. And with those varieties, with those vines, they brought the insect, they brought the phylloxera. And that's when the phylloxera started basically eating some of the Armenian vineyards as well. But luckily, Armenian vineyards lie on partly volcanic soils. And because of that, so this insect basically, it cannot really move. It moves underground, it moves under the soil, and in the sand, in volcanic sand, it cannot really move that quickly. So in those volcanic soils, it doesn't really move that quickly, and it never really spread that widely as it did in Europe, and it never really damaged. Luckily, it never really damaged the Armenian.
What I like about Nuraz is, well, first of all, it's not an expensive wine. And it's a great value for the money. I have never come across a wine that has been in oak for 12 months and is so masterfully done, and it's not expensive. And this is a perfect wine if you guys are throwing a barbecue party and you want to have like lots of it, but you don't want to be spending like 70 pounds on each bottle. So for me, this is a wine for barbecue, definitely, any meat dishes, it doesn't require a lot of decanting, even though it has been in oak for 12 months. So I would say your usual suspects for any red, that you would pair for red wine. I always suggested, when people come to me and say, oh, we're buying it for a party, we need red wine for a party, I'm always saying, okay, go with Nuraz. Everyone is going to love it. This is another thing about this wine, that I haven't come across a person that will say, oh, I don't like Nuraz. So this is and the blend is really signature. I mean, we have another wine which has Hachtanak in Kafet as its main blend, and it has a bit of an ardi. It's called Vanakan. It's a non-vintage wine, which was released to commemorate Armenian genocide in 2005. He released in 2015, but it has like a blend of wines from different years, and most of it comes from a 2005 vintage, and that's where I have Hachtanak in Kafet blend. By the way, Hachtanak in Armenian means victory. Kachet has got nothing to do with the Georgian region Kacheti. This is another interesting conversation that is going on again at the moment, but it has got nothing to do with it. It comes from a word hanging, because the shape of the vine and the way the grapes grow, it's like very much hanging, and that's why it's called kachet. So if you, in Armenia, all of the wineries make wine from ardi. All of them make wine from Hachtanak. No one makes it from pure kachet. Kachet goes into sweet fortified wine that we have, which is actually listed on, if you guys know 67 Pall Mall, the wine club in London, on Pall Mall, they have some of this wine. They have Nuraz listed. They actually Kangun, Nuraz, Oldbridge, apart from rosé, because you go to these kind of places, no one is going to be listing Armenian rosés that much.
So is anyone actually tasting the Oldbridge today as well? And it's a lot of there is a lot of spiciness to it. There is a lot of dry fruit. There's a lot of like dry cranberry and raisins and prunes, and these are the things that I'm getting, at least. So it's interesting it's a wine which is really fascinating and interesting to taste, surely. And it does have those kind of tertiary aromas of dry leaves and forest floor and things like
It
this.
was, yeah, it was fermented in oak, and then it stayed in oak for 2 years. New oak, new Karabakh Artsakh oak for 2 years. Then it was then it rested for a couple of years in the cellar in the winery. Then it was released. So it's now 7-year-old wine. We put it, actually, guys, we put it in the sort of third Armenian wine case option because we didn't know. It's very difficult, when you're holding a tasting like this and you're putting a more expensive wine, people don't know what to expect. So, sometimes people go for, a safer option, and they go for, a wine that, they don't know what will come. But maybe in a different occasion, in a different restaurant, we can always send you a list of restaurants that you can taste these wines. But to talk about this wine a bit, it's probably the smallest producing Garagist winery. They produce only 8,000 bottles. They are located 10 kilometers away from that ardi cave that we showed you. They work exclusively with ardi noir grape, and they don't do any fruit-driven wines. Not necessarily, it's a wrong way of saying it. They make only reserve wines. They release wines many years after they've been made. So we have at the moment 14, 13, 2009, and 2005 vintages. So it's a family venture. They don't have any employees, right? So when it comes to different stages of wine making, when it comes to pruning, harvesting, selecting the grapes at the winery, you have the village people that come in to play to help the winemaker, the family. So the men will go to the vineyards, the women will come to the winery, and they will do it. It's very, every time I talk about it, I have goosebumps because it's not a commercial thing. This is a very much a family affair, and they just produce 8,000 bottles, and that's it. They are sold out even before they release. So it's quite an interesting wine, I would say. And I hope you will have a chance to try it at some point. I think Armenian wine has got a huge future. And
Sure,
I just wish that, how would I say, that somehow commercially it wasn't that expensive either. Because when you compare Armenia and Georgia, Georgia has been producing wine commercially for during Soviet time as well. So they've never lost that. We were producing as well, but from the top, from sort of Moscow, it was Armenians produce brandy, Georgians produce wine. And another thing is because they have all
that was during the Soviet
time.
times. That was just
Exactly.
decided this way,
So
basically. That's
for
the way it
them,
should be.
to go into international markets after the Soviet Union collapsed, okay, it took a bit of time to adjust, but they made it quicker because it was in a way a very much a commercial enterprise for them. In any case, they were supplying most of Soviet Union republics. For Armenians, and the other thing about Armenians, they are very proud people, and they don't like producing poor quality. So they will, at least that's what I would like to think of. Because maybe because I'm Armenian, I'm also subjective to but we should never focus. We should always focus on a good quality wine because we cannot produce that much, but we will always be more expensive than Georgian wines, and for a reason.
But then
And I
think,
hope.
and sorry, just interrupting you here, jumping in, but I think another reason that it is the quality is so high is for all those small family wineries, all those little wine enterprises who really take this business very personally and who really do it with all their soul, with all their enthusiasm, because this is how Armenian winemaking really revived, isn't it? Just thanks to people that we discussed today, right? Who just sort of decided that I live in this land and it's so great. It's great for growing the vines, and we can do it. We can try, and let's just start small, right? And step by step, just build something great, basically. So it's only been in the last 10 years, hasn't it? Just sort of changing, and
it's very much a 10-year sort of love fair in terms of coming back to your roots, because Armenians were making wine, as we've seen, you know, in the cave, and they have been making throughout their life. It's just that commercially they started thinking about taking Armenian noir. I think Armenian noir. I think this is one thing that if you guys were to take away with you, and you say you've tried Armenian wine, I think one thing that will be very interesting if for you to remember and to share, Armenian noir is considered, it's yet to be true, but it is considered to be the ancestor of Pinot Noir. And a lot of time when people drink Armenian noir, especially professionals, and depending on the style that it has been made, they can relate flavor profiles and how the grape behaves itself and the wine behaves itself. And I don't know whether you know Os Clark. He's a very prominent person in wine industry. He's the one that he told me when I started this business, and I literally put a lot of money into this when I ventured to bring a container of Armenian wines with my first shipment. He said, Zara, the way for you to talk about Armenian noir and to promote it is to say, this is the great, great grandfather of Pinot Noir. And when you look into the history, and if the grapes and the wine started there, unless of course, you know, sometimes, you know, in the future, someone in Iceland will find something which is 10,000 years old, like in that, you know, cartoon where you have, you know, the frozen age thing. Maybe they will find something, you know, a grape there. But anyway, if the grape and the, you know, has been traveling and then seeding into different countries, it would have been mutating. And, you know, Pinot Noir, which we also know gave birth to other grape varieties, could easily be its descendant. So it's a very interesting grape for me. I personally love it. Anyway.
Yeah, they do call it the Armenian Pinot Noir very often. You would meet this comparison very often in different articles and stuff. And yeah, it is widely similar in terms of elegance, delicacy of the flavors and the flavor profile.
And it's a difficult grape to grow as well. It's not an easy one, like
same as Pinot Noir, famously difficult to grow. Yeah, for sure.
And because, you know, Armenia is very much in high mountains. You actually have to bear. It's cold. Winter time, it's freezing. Like especially in the mountains, where, for example, all ridge vineyards are. At night, in winter time, it can drop to -25, -30. These vines will die if you don't take care of them. And the way to take care of them is to bury them with earth. So it's a lot of work taken care of to make sure that these vines survive cold winters, which, for example, they don't have in Georgia because of, you know, lower altitude, different climate, etc., etc. And that's why, for example, Pinot as well. It's Burgundy. It's much cooler Burgundy as opposed to Bordeaux, where you have Cabernet Sauvignon. It's different climate. So Armenia also loves that, you know, the way Pinot does.
If you want private jet, yes, Zara. If you want private wine tasting, just call us. We are very, very close to you. Thank you, guys, and cheers.
Yeah, we can take you anywhere anytime. Virtually. We can definitely take you virtually, and hopefully with the jet.
Next time. To the Queen, guys.
Yes, to the Queen.
To the
Queen.
Cheers.
Thank you all.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Fantastic
guys.
evening.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
The bottles.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.